Alright guys, so today I'll be reviewing the Beast at Kings Island, which I consider to be the best coaster at Kings Island, and I'll get into why I think that in this review. Let's start off with how to get to this ride. So, when you go under Diamondback or come around like where Vortex was, like kind of past Windseeker, you're gonna see a bunch of like footprints, and those lead to the Beast's entrance. If you don't follow those and you don't really know where it's at, you might get lost and not be able to find it, which would be unfortunate. But once you get into the queue, it's like nothing special. It's just like a shed. Not the Mystic Timber shed, but it's just a holding pen and with switchbacks and stuff. But the weird thing is the Fast Pass queue goes up the exit, and then kind of like halfway through, it splits off into the Fast Pass queue and then the wheelchair queue, so that's kind of interesting. So, one thing to note is that they do assign rows, but they will gladly take row requests. I personally think the back is the place to be, so I always requested the back, and they pretty much always give it to me. Unless someone else is coming up the exit ramp. And by the way, don't cheat yourself. Don't go in row 17 or anything. No, you need the full row 18 experience. Row 18, or I'll take row 16 over row 17, because you gotta be on a wheel seat for this ride, unless you really don't like roughness. So, Beast will start off with an extremely slow turn to the right. This thing doesn't do anything. This ain't an RMC pre-lift or anything. This does nothing except give you a good view of Orion. But other than that, then you'll go into the lift, which something's weird about this. I mean, they used to have a block zone where the trims are now, which I'll get into later, but they removed that. So now the first lift has to wait for the train in front of it to clear the second lift. And if you know anything about this ride's extremely long, so that's sometimes gonna suck if you've got a slow train ahead of you. Yeah, a lot of times it would just like absolutely crawl up the lift hill the whole time. So yeah, be aware of that. Not much you can do about it, but it's a slow lift hill sometimes. So then, you'll go into your first drop, which in the front half of the train really, you don't get much. I mean, you pick up some speed, but in the back couple cars, you actually get some good floater. I mean, this ride's not known for airtime, but there's definitely those moments where you get some airtime on this thing. And then you're going to take a really abrupt left-hand turn. And this is where you're going to start to feel the full power of the Beast and why you want to sit in a wheel seat. If you're like my dad or someone who just really doesn't like roughness, sit in a wheel seat. But if you're someone who likes the chaotic, like rough wooden experience like me, definitely go in a wheel seat. Again, I take row 16. Or even row 15 or 14 over row 17 on this ride. So after that, you're going to go over a hill, which, again, in the front, you don't really get much, but in the back, you do get a good floater pop. I'll admit that. In the back couple cars, you get a good floater pop on that. And that's a nice, intense turn. And then you've got this weird straight track, which if you're sitting on a wheel seat, it's kind of like the same thing as that dud hill on El Toro, where it's kind of like so bouncy that you kind of get airtime just from the track bouncing, like the train bouncing up and down on the track, so that's interesting. And then you'll hit that trim break, which used to be a block section, which now it's not, so lower capacity. But even though it's not a block zone, I still say that trim's kind of necessary, because this track would probably literally fall apart after a few days or some amount of time, the track would fall apart if that trim wasn't there, because this ride still hauls through the rest of the course, even with that trim. And since this is such a long coaster, and it was a wooden coaster back in the 70s, like, yeah, I'm not too sure that track would age well. So then you're going to go into a right-hand turn and pick up a ton of speed. And through all this, you are flying through the woods. You are immersed in the atmosphere in the woods. It is great. And then you enter a tunnel, and this thing feels... the clearance on this feels dangerously close. Like, it's ridiculous. You might want to put your hands down for this. And the laterals are bonkers on this ride. Okay, this is by far the best ride for laterals that I've experienced. And this is just one of the first few instances of it. And this is a good sustained moment of laterals. I mean, you're just pinned to the side of your seat this and the entire turn. And then once you emerge from the tunnel, you go into like a couple other turns that give great laterals as well. And then you'll hit kind of a drop, which you pick up so much speed. You feel like you're flying through this. This kind of feels like a launch almost. You pick up so much speed. And then there's just this violent jolt to the right that sends you absolutely flying to the left. So if you don't like laterals, you don't like roughness, this isn't a ride for you. But I like both of those things as long as there's no over-the-shoulder restraints, which there's not on this ride. It's just a nice, comfy PTC lap bar. So yeah, I love this ride. So then you'll hit another hill, which front row, kind of a bit of airtime, I guess, but nothing really. That's kind of a dud. And then you'll hit the second lift hill, and at the top of that, they'll tell you, there's like a sign telling you, keep your arms down. And please listen to that sign, because while you, like, just at least keep your hands in the train. You don't have to hold on. I wouldn't recommend holding on if you want to feel the full force of this ride, but at least keep your arms in the train, because, okay, let's start off with the first drop on this thing, on the second half, which halfway down the drop, it, like, just banks itself to the left. It's so weird. And then the stupidest thing happens. You just get violently, I mean, this is one of the most violent elements on any coaster by far. You get violently thrown to the right when you hit this left-hand turn, and the laterals on this double helix are more sustained than, like, anything on any element on any coaster, period. Like, again, laterals aren't my favorite, alright, I'm not saying that. I still like airtime the most, but the laterals on this are just so good, I can't look past it. And half of this is in a tunnel. And remember when that sign told you to keep your arms down? Yeah, this clearance isn't clearance. I mean, I heard somewhere, maybe it was an El Toro Ryan video or something, that you could literally touch the tunnel if you really wanted to, which I don't recommend you doing, but you could if you really wanted to. So that's why you should definitely, like, keep your arms down. Or, like, the first ride when I didn't really notice how close it was, like, I kind of, like, had to, like, throw my arms, like, over to the right because I was doing no hands. But still, this ride's just relentless. It's rough. It's just everything. And also after that double helix, you get a little pop of airtime on the next hill. And then nice straight section on the brake run. So that concludes your ride on the Beast, which is a very beastly coaster. Again, sit on a wheel seat, please, unless you really don't like roughness. Again, I'll take row 13 over row 17 on this ride. Like, do anything you can to sit in the front or the back of a car. Yeah, I wouldn't ride this coaster in a middle seat because it's just too smooth. That sounds so weird, but I don't know. The roughness definitely adds to this ride. It wouldn't be nearly as good without the chaotic nature of this thing just being rough and violently shaking you around while having these violent turns. So my final score for the Beast is a 10 because there's just it's missing in a lot of the categories that make a good coaster, but it just makes up for it in so many other ways. And like night rides are ridiculous. You're just flying through the woods. You can't see a thing. And like it's just amazing, like flying through the woods while just being thrown all around. And this is my favorite coaster at Kings Island. It's in my top 10 overall. So let me know what you guys think of the Beast. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.